She came with hope in her hands, a letter in her pocket, and dreams of a warm cabin filled with love. But when she stepped down from that wagon, the wind did not greet her. Only silence. And 5 children hiding behind a broken door. The wagon creaked to a stop on the edge of the prairie road, and dust floated in the air like old memories. Josephine Harlan, Josie, as her mother once called her, stood up slowly, her boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. She clutched the letter in her hand. It was smudged and folded, with the name Rhett Callahan written strong across the top. He had written sweet things. Promised a cabin. A garden. Chickens. A place to belong. Josie was tired of not belonging anywhere. She stepped forward, her eyes searching for the cabin he had written about. But what she saw made her stop in her tracks. It was not a cabin. It was barely standing. The roof sagged low in the middle like it had given up trying. The steps were broken. A shutter hung sideways by a single nail. Faded laundry flapped in the wind, though no one had come out to greet her. Josie turned to the wagon driver. "Are you sure this is the Callahan homestead?" The old man tipped his hat. "Ma'am, this here's the only Callahan place in 50 miles. And with that, he drove off, leaving only the sound of wheels and the distant cry of a hawk. Josie stood alone on the dirt path. She walked slowly toward the shack. Her heart thumped louder with each step. Maybe Rhett was inside. Maybe he was just late. Maybe. A soft creak. She froze. The wooden door moved slightly. Then 5 faces peeked out, all eyes, dirt, and tangled hair. The tallest, a girl around 11, stared straight at Josie. Her arms crossed tight, like she'd been crossed too many times before. Behind her stood a boy, thin and quiet, maybe 9. He didn't blink. Another boy peeked from behind his shoulder, smaller, with wild hair and a stick in his hand. A girl, tiny and pale, hugged a torn stuffed rabbit to her chest. And in the arms of the oldest girl was a baby, maybe 1 year old, his cheeks flushed and lips trembling. Josie's voice caught in her throat. "Hello," she said gently, kneeling down. Is your father home?" The oldest girl stepped forward just a little. "He ain't here." Josie looked behind them into the dark house. "Is your mother?" "She's gone. Been gone a long while." Josie's heart sank. "What about the woman who was caring for you?" "She passed this spring." The baby began to whimper. The youngest girl rocked on her feet. Josie stood up slowly. "My name is Josie Harlan. I came to marry Mr. Rhett Callahan." The older girl didn't flinch. "He's not coming back. You should go." Josie looked at the shack. At the empty rocking chair. At the sagging roof. Then back at the 5 faces. I'll just stay the night," she said softly. "And be on my way in the morning." No one said a word. But as she stepped onto the porch, the baby reached toward her with both arms. The fabric of her heart tore a little. That night, she sat on the porch with baby Joey cradled against her chest. The sky stretched wide and dark above her. Coyotes howled in the distance, and wind scraped across the plain. But all Josie could hear was the soft breathing of the child in her arms. She looked up at the stars. "Lord," she whispered, "this wasn't the plan, but maybe it's still your plan." The wind didn't answer. But the baby didn't cry. And that was enough. She came with nothing but a satchel, a letter, and her name. Now 5 little souls were watching her, wondering if she'd stay. Most grown-ups had left them. Would she be the next? The morning came slow and quiet. Pale sunlight crept across the floorboards of the little shack, where Josie lay wrapped in a borrowed quilt. The air smelled like dust and something sour. Chickens clucked somewhere far off but not close enough to belong here. She sat up and rubbed her aching back. Her eyes found baby Joey asleep in the crook of her arm, his head resting on her chest as if he'd been born there. For a moment, Josie didn't move. She just stared at the child, small and warm and breathing easy. Her heart tightened. Not with fear, but something deeper. Something like calling. The door creaked behind her. "Clara?" she asked. The oldest girl stood at the doorway, arms crossed. "You said you'd leave in the morning." Josie gently shifted the baby into the crook of her shawl. "Yes, I did." "Then you should." Josie stood slowly. "Where's your kitchen? I'd like to make breakfast first." Clara narrowed her eyes. "We don't got much left. I can make something out of little." Inside, the shack was still cold and empty, but now Josie could see it clearer. A broken chair. A rusty stove. A wooden shelf with half a jar of oats, a chipped tin plate and 2 cracked mugs. A dented kettle. She rolled up her sleeves. Seth, the wild-haired boy, peeked in and watched as she boiled water, stirred what little oats remained with milk she found in a glass bottle outside, and sliced one shriveled apple she discovered beneath a sack of onions. The children sat cross-legged on the floor, watching her like she was some strange traveling show. When she handed out 5 small bowls, no one spoke. Not even Clara. Not even Wyatt, the quiet one who always kept his eyes down. But when baby Joey squealed and smacked the table for more, Seth laughed, and then Lottie did too. It was the first sound of joy the shack had heard in a long time. Later that day, Josie took a rag in warm water and helped Lottie wash her face and hands. The little girl whispered, "Are you a real mama?" Josie smiled gently. "No. But I think I could be a good one." Seth wandered in from outside, his hands full of sticks. "Are you staying?" Josie hesitated. "Would you want me to?" He shrugged, but his voice cracked. "I don't like when grown-ups leave." Josie leaned down. "Neither do I." By sundown, the shack was swept, the fire crackled again, and the children were eating warm stew made from scraps and root vegetables Josie had found buried in a crate outside. She found an old Bible on a shelf, Rhett Callahan's name inside the cover in ink. Her finger lingered there a long time. Where was he? Why hadn't he come for them? As the children curled into their makeshift beds, 2 on the floor, 1 in a cradle, 1 in the corner, and baby Joey beside Josie, she knelt and prayed. She didn't ask for riches. She didn't ask for Rhett. She asked for strength. And for the love to do what she wasn't sure she could. Outside, the prairie wind sang through the cracks in the wall. But inside there was warmth for the first time. Not from the fire, but from a woman who chose to stay. She was building a home out of nothing, just scraps, prayer, and 5 growing hearts. But then came the sound of boots in the dust. And the man who should have been there from the start finally walked through the door. The days had begun to blend, soft and slow. Josie woke early, stirred porridge with sleepy arms, wiped baby Joey's chin with her shawl, and braided Clara's hair as she stood near the window watching the prairie wake up. She'd patched Seth's trousers and taught Wyatt how to sweep without just pushing the dirt around. Lottie sang to her stuffed rabbit now, quiet lullabies Josie didn't know but hummed along to. And every night, when she knelt by the fire and prayed, the children didn't stop her. They joined. One by one. Josie never meant to fall into motherhood. But it was happening, quietly like sunrise. And though the shack still creaked and the roof still dripped when it rained, it didn't feel like just a place anymore. It was becoming a home. Until the day someone knocked. The sound was heavy and unsure. Josie froze where she stood, spoon in one hand, baby on her hip. Clara looked up from where she was mending a hem. Then came a voice, low, worn, rough from wind and time. Is anyone here?" Josie walked slowly to the door, heart thumping like thunder in her chest. She opened it. And there he stood. Dust on his boots. A coat that had seen better days. Beard thick. Shoulders broad but slumped with shame. Rhett Callahan. She knew it from the eyes, blue like the sky right before a storm. The same eyes from the name in the Bible. The same man who had written sweet letters and never shown up. For a long moment he didn't speak. Neither did she. Then Clara stepped beside her, jaw set like stone. "You're late," she said. The man lowered his head. "I know." Wyatt peeked out from behind the table. Seth stood frozen, eyes wide. Lottie clung to Josie's skirt. And baby Joey, who had no memory of this man, buried his face in Josie's neck. Rhett's eyes filled with something sharp. Regret. Loss. Maybe guilt. "I didn't know what to do after Martha died," he said softly. "I couldn't face him. Or the ranch. I thought sending for help would be enough." Josie's voice came quiet, steady. "You thought a bride could fill in the cracks?" He nodded. "I thought I could come back once it didn't hurt so much." She stared at him. "But you didn't come back." "No." His boots shifted in the dust. "And now I find my children clean, fed, and you here. Why?" Josie glanced back at the table where Clara was helping Lottie untangle her rabbit's ear. Wyatt sat beside Seth, who was already trying to sneak another biscuit. She looked at Rhett. "Because someone had to stay," she said. That evening Rhett sat alone in the barn. Josie brought him a plate but said little. The children didn't speak much either. Only Clara whispered to Josie before bed, "Are we gonna have to like him?" Josie kissed her forehead. "Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But you don't have to run. He's the one who has to prove he'll stay." And Rhett heard her from where he sat near the door, plate in his lap, tears in his eyes. He'd been a father once. But tonight he saw something he had never expected. A stranger had become more of a mother in 2 weeks than he had been in 2 years. And now, if he wanted to rebuild anything, he'd have to start not with words but with work. She had fixed the roof, swept the floors, and mended 5 broken hearts. But when the skies turned black and the winds came knocking, it wasn't the house that would be tested. It was the man who left it all behind, and the woman who chose to stay. The day started like any other. Seth was chasing a grasshopper across the yard. Clara was kneeling by the garden Josie had coaxed back to life with potato peels and hope. Lottie sat under the porch, humming to her rabbit and drawing circles in the dust. Joey napped in Josie's lap as she hummed an old hymn, and Wyatt read silently nearby, his fingers tracing each word like it might vanish. Rhett had begun to help in quiet ways. He fetched water, repaired the chicken pen, tried not to scare the children when he came too close. He was a man trying to fit back into his own shadow. Josie noticed him watching. Not just the children, but her. How she held them. How they looked to her first. He missed too much, and he knew it. By midday the wind began to rise. First a gentle push, then stronger. The prairie grasses bent low. The hens clucked nervously. Josie stood and looked to the sky. It had turned the color of pewter, heavy and strange. Clara whispered, "Is it coming?" Josie nodded. "Get inside. Fast." The storm hit hard. Thunder cracked like gunfire. Wind slammed against the shack, shaking the shutters, lifting the corners of the patched roof. Rain spilled through the old ceiling boards and dripped onto the floor. Joey screamed. Lottie cried. Wyatt held Seth tight, trying to act brave. Clara ran for the bucket to catch the leaks, slipping in the mud near the door. And Josie didn't run. She grabbed blankets, wrapped them around the children, held them close, and whispered, "It's just a storm. It can't take us. Not if we hold on." She turned, and there was Rhett fighting against the wind at the back door, trying to fasten a loose beam, soaked to the bone, hammer in hand. For the first time he didn't look like the man who left. He looked like a father fighting to come home. The worst of it passed in the dark hours, when the only light was from the hearth and the only sound was children breathing in their sleep, tucked into every safe corner Josie had made. Outside the wind finally sighed, and stilled. Inside Rhett stood dripping near the door, mud on his boots, hands scraped and bruised. "You stayed calm," he said quietly. "Like you'd done this 100 times. Josie turned from where she was drying a towel by the fire. "I hadn't. But they needed someone who wouldn't fall apart." He looked at her then, not like a stranger, not like a mistake, but like a woman he couldn't stop admiring. "I don't know how to be their father anymore," he said. Josie met his eyes. "Then start by being someone they don't have to be afraid of." He nodded slowly. "And you? I didn't come for this. But I stayed for them. And, would you stay longer?" Josie hesitated. "Only if I'm not alone in it." That night, Rhett took first watch at the window just in case the storm came back. And Josie slept by the fire with Lottie curled against her side, Joey's tiny hand tucked into her own. Outside, the prairie was soaked and quiet. Inside, two hearts were beginning to rebuild something more powerful than a house. A home. She came to marry a man she never met. She stayed to feed 5 children she didn't birth. And now, love was no longer just a word in a letter. It was the sound of laughter, the feel of tiny hands, and a table full of grace. The storm had passed. But something else had shifted too. Rhett didn't disappear again. He rose early. Fed the chickens. He taught Seth how to tie knots and let Wyatt ride with him to town. He listened when Clara spoke, and apologized when she finally said, "You left." That hurt more than anything. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded and said, "I know." It wasn't perfect. Sometimes baby Joey still reached for Josie first. Sometimes Lottie still hid under the porch when thunder rolled in the distance. But day by day things grew softer. Stronger. Josie patched the roof with Rhett. He taught her to ride a horse, though she screamed the first time it moved. They laughed. Real laughter, not the polite kind. And one night, while she was folding laundry by the fire, he knelt beside her and said, "I didn't just write you a letter, Josie. I prayed for you. I just didn't expect God to send someone like you." She looked at him, tears welling. "I didn't expect him to use 5 children to change my whole life." He offered her a choice. Not a ring. Not yet. Just a choice. A place here. A name to share. A life to build. With him. With them. She didn't answer right away. Instead, the next morning she set the table. 6 plates. 6 cups. She poured the coffee. Cut the bread. Scooped eggs onto each dish. And when Rhett walked in, freshly shaven and holding a basket of eggs, he saw her. Standing at the stove. Hair braided, apron tied, baby on her hip. And he knew her answer. That morning they all sat around the table. Clara bowed her head in prayer. Wyatt grinned at Seth, who already had jam on his cheeks. Lottie fed her rabbit a pretend spoonful. Joey giggled mouthful. Rhett passed the bread. And Josie sat among them with a quiet smile. She had come for a cabin and a man. But God had given her a family. And when the wind rose again outside the window, no one trembled. Because the walls had been rebuilt. But more than that, so had the hearts. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love is more than romance, that family is who stays when it's hard. And that sometimes God leads us down broken roads to beautiful places. Then like, share and subscribe for more stories like this one. And remember, the greatest love stories are the ones built on faith, courage, and second chances. See you in the next tale under western skies.